Good Thursday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Harapsky. New today, Governor Walz revealing his plan to fight fraud in the state. He has to prove it to Minnesotans and the federal government. It includes modernizing how federal money gets sent to those who need it so fraud can be caught before it happens. This proposal was in the works before Vice President J.D. Vance announced the feds would pause $259 million in Medicaid payments to Minnesota. Those funds would be held back until state leaders propose a solution to widespread fraud, according to the vice president. 1 in 4 Minnesotans use Medicaid. Governor Walz insists that the pause has nothing to do with fraud.
This Medicaid money grab and retribution, it's the same pattern. They used false information as a pretense to do Operation Metro Surge. They're using false information or no information as a pretense to take our tax dollars from a state that has some of the best outcomes in the country on health care, has some of the lowest error rates on Medicaid, and now asking us to turn away people who need that health care.
If payments are paused to the state can't then reimburse providers who provide that care, and that could affect care to a lot of people. However, the federal administrator for Medicaid is Dr. Mehmet Oz. He says Minnesota can make up that funding gap.
To make it clear, there is a rainy day fund in Minnesota, so we are very confident that people will not be hurt in Minnesota. If providers and beneficiaries are worried about getting their money and services, please call your governor.
There's also a plan to fight fraud coming from the chambers of the state capitol. Our Sammy Salina is here to explain.
A busy day for fraud politics in Minnesota started with an announcement from Attorney General Keith Ellison.
When people commit Medicaid fraud, they're stealing from all of us.
Alongside DFL lawmakers, Ellison introduced a bill similar to a failed effort in 2025, expanding his office's ability to investigate fraud. The Medicaid Fraud Control Unit currently has 32 staff members. They're asking for 18 additional workers and additional expanded powers.
The MAP Act adds more legal tools to help investigate, prosecute major fraud schemes, like adding Medicaid fraud to our racketeering laws, giving our office the ability to subpoena financial records that we currently don't have and rely on county attorneys to do.
They're asking for an extra $1.2 million a year. Ellison says the feds would match every Minnesota dollar 3-1.
Every single dollar of fraud is unacceptable.
Ellison's effort is part of a package of anti-fraud bills announced by the DFL. That includes more background checks, updating IT systems, approving the divisive Office of Inspector General bill, and moving away from privatization of government services.
Adds in people who are not subject to public audits, and it makes it easier for these fraudsters to use these schemes against our public programs. And so we want to make sure that we reverse that trend toward privatization.
GOP floor leader Harry Niska, who authored his own anti-fraud bill, isn't on board with the deprivatization push.
This administration has been characterized by incompetence in almost every department. And so the idea that we would necessarily think the answer is to shift more responsibility into within departments that have been characterized by incompetence, that's not the solution either.
But he does see a bipartisan future in some initiatives.
Well, it's good that we finally are seeing the House DFL at least talk the talk on fraud. And it's good to see that they have it looks like they have changed their position on some of the things that we've had to fight for, in terms of making sure that local governments have the updates to software programs and things like that.
Sammy Salina, KARE 11 News.
Today, grassroots organizers and religious leaders are heading to the Capitol to speak out about the impacts Operation Metro Surge is still continuing to have on communities there. This comes just one day after mayors from 4 cities, including Minneapolis and St. Paul, joined business owners and others at the state capitol to testify about their fears that there is no financial relief. Leaders say the impacts stretch beyond the metro.
There is significant loss of working capital, loss of revenue, and that's impacting the families up and down the commercial corridors, the main streets in these rural areas, the ag businesses that support them, and everywhere else. Please consider emergency relief funding for the businesses.
Senator Bobby Joe Champion says he's working on drafting a bill to provide relief, but wanted to hear from those directly impacted first. Currently, there isn't any statewide economic impact data on how the surge has affected Minnesota. You may recall the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota is seriously understaffed right now, leading to questions about how the office will be able to prosecute new cases. At least 14 federal prosecutors, they resigned since the beginning of the year. KARE 11 has reported on 2 recent cases that were dropped, according to court filings, because of staffing issues. The U.S. Attorney's Office cannot keep up with these cases. Today, U.S. Attorney Dan Rosen denied those reports, but didn't give any explanation. This happened yesterday. He says the office has just over half the prosecutors it did when the last U.S. attorney stepped down at the end of the Biden administration. But he says hiring is strong.
And understand, we're hiring at a good clip. We've got people who have accepted positions. We've got offers that are going out, and we're actually very gratified that we are getting extraordinarily high-quality applications from all over the country, people that want to come and join our effort here.
Rosen said his office is also getting support from federal lawyers who are filling in from across the country. Today, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is testifying in the House investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Clinton, in her opening statement, says she had no idea about the criminal activities of Epstein, never flew on his plane, nor visited his island home or offices. Her husband, former President Bill Clinton, will testify tomorrow. What will be the first time a former president has been deposed by Congress. They're testifying to avoid being held in contempt of Congress. Both Bill and Hillary have said they have nothing to add to the Epstein investigation, with the former president saying he cut ties with him before learning of any Epstein crimes. A $12 billion federal bailout for farmers is finally open for applications this week after a lot of delays. But after last year's tariffs and trade wars, our state ag commissioner calls it more of a Band-Aid. And as Kent Erdahl explains, for more than 1,000 Minnesota farmers, it comes too late.
A great soybean growing season in Minnesota last year was not enough to offset the cost of tariffs.
Couldn't cover our cost of production.
When Ryan Mockentune talked to us back in September, he hoped the price of soybeans would recover thanks to an agreement with China to buy Minnesota's largest ag export. But months later,
our anticipated losses were over $100 an acre.
All he can hope for now is to recover about $30 per acre in the form of so-called bridge payments from the Trump administration.
Every little bit's going to help, and kind of making us whole.
We did lose kind of a year that created chaos and put a lot of farmers in peril. And so we'll have to continue to see what happens.
Minnesota Ag Commissioner Tom Peterson says he's concerned Minnesota stands to lose even more farms if those payments are delayed. The University of Minnesota Extension Office reported 226 new mediation claims in January between farmers and their banks. That's way up from 88 mediation cases in December.
But the fact of the matter is right now our farmers are struggling, and so these bridge payments will help farmers, in these situations.
Especially, he says, because weather is far from the biggest concern coming into another growing season.
There continues to be uncertainty with the tariffs. We had a tariff, and then the court ruled, and then the president said we're going to do 10%. Then he said we're going to do 15%. Now we're back to doing 10%. If you're buying from the United States, it's hard to cut a deal.
And if you're farming, it's hard to cut it, period.
Just about every crop that you're putting in, whether it's corn, soybeans, wheat, sugar beets, you're right now putting it in at a loss. In some cases, a significant loss.
Farmers are planting on good faith that eventually our markets will come back to profitable levels.
But once again, that faith is being tested.
As a fifth-generation farmer, I want my kids to be able to continue on our legacy farm, but is that a viable option for them? That weighs a lot on me personally, and whether it's even something I want to put them into if they're handling all these pressures and stresses and things that are out of control.
Mockentune isn't giving up. He is vice president of the Minnesota Soybean Growers Association, and he's at a national conference right now where they're advocating for ways to improve the market here in the U.S. in hopes of reducing the need for trade with China and future bailouts. But until the market comes back, he says he'll likely plant more corn and hope he can hold on. The Paralympics opening ceremony is just 1 week from tomorrow. And today, one of the Minnesota athletes is flying out to Italy with hopes of returning home with the gold. 17-year-old Liam Cunningham is from Lakeland, Minnesota, and on the men's sled hockey team. He's not only the youngest player on the team, but the first Minnesotan to compete on that squad.
Super cool. Not only represent the country, but obviously the state of Minnesota. We're coming in as the 1 seed, so obviously we have our eyes set on a gold medal. We've won 4 consecutive Paralympic Games. I haven't been a part of any of those teams, but I'm hoping to be a part of another gold medal winning team. I mean, that's our goal. That's what we've been working for these last couple of years.
The hockey team's first game is next Saturday against Italy. Well, it's been 1 week since USA women's hockey beat Canada to win Olympic gold, and today the PWHL is back after taking a break for the games. Ahead of their return, some of the Minnesota Frost players who won gold in Milan shared their support of the men's team. They were asked about a now viral moment when President Trump called the men's team and joked that he'd also have to invite the women to the White House, otherwise he'd be impeached. Here's what Taylor Heise and Kelly Panic said about it.
Obviously, you take what you may with what was said and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's a gold medal around our necks and theirs as well, and we're coming back to the Frost with a win, so that helps.
I think there's also elements to it with the phone call specifically. It's not surprising, to be frank, so I don't know why we expect differently. But I think for us, it's also just about getting back to the focus on our team and what our team accomplished, and that was, I think, dominant hockey.
Heise and Panic both added that they support the men's team and that they know the men support them too. The Frost first game after the Olympics is Sunday in Montreal. Stick with us, we got more news and weather coming up after the break.